Welcome historians to this video discussing the life events and imperial impact of Sir Winston Churchill in this biography.
We bring this to you from our class, The Rise and the Fall of the British Empire.
Taught by the renowned Dr. Dale Montgomery.
My name is Carl.
My name is Jose.
And I'm Zane.
And we'll take you on a history journey. Let's go. Okay, let's go for a walk. So, Winston Churchill is one of the most famous figures in modern history. Known for his prominent influence in the British Empire, his civil, imposing, and complex racial views, and his leadership during World War II and his speeches that inspired a nation. But who was Churchill, and how did he become this iconic figure that we know today? Churchill was born in 1874 in Blenheim Palace, England, into a rich aristocratic family with a long history of military and political service. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a member of Parliament representing the Conservative Party in Woodstock in 1873. His mother, Jenny Jerome, was an American-born heiress and society figure. Churchill grew up in a privileged environment and was well educated at some of the best schools in the country. Initially, though, he struggled in his academic career in his youth. He would improve and pursue a military career, however, later graduating at the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. As a young man, Churchill joined the British Army and saw action in several campaigns, including the Sudan and the Second Boer War. In 1900, Churchill was elected to Parliament as a Conservative MP, and over the next few years, he established himself as a rising star in British politics. He switched to the Liberal Party in 1904 and held several high-ranking government positions, including Home Secretary and Chancellor of the Exchequer. During the pre-World War II years, his alerts regarding the menace presented by Germany under Adolf Hitler's regime were consistently disregarded. Following the outbreak of war, he was reinstated to his previous role as the head of the Admiralty. Subsequent to Neville Chamberlain's resignation, Churchill undertook the leadership of a coalition government as a prime minister between 1940 and 1945. He staunchly committed himself as a nation to an all-encompassing war until the attainment of triumph. And his exceptional eloquence, vigor, and unyielding perseverance made him an exemplary figure to his compatriots. Following the war, he sounded the alarm to the Western nations regarding the ambitious expansionist agenda of the Soviet Union. Churchill would then steer the Conservative Party back into power in 1951 and hold the position of Prime Minister until 1955, until he was compelled to resign due to his deteriorating health. In recognition of his prolific writings, notably his magnum opus, The Second World War, spanning 6 volumes and published in 1948 to 1953, he was conferred the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1953. Among his subsequent literary contributions, his History of the English-Speaking Peoples, comprising of 4 volumes, was published in 1958, and that stands out. In 1953, he was granted a knighthood, which he accepted, but he subsequently declined the offer of a peerage. His exceptional achievements culminated in his honorary U.S. citizenship in 1963. And in his twilight years, he achieved an elevated status as one of the towering figures in 20th century, celebrated as a hero. In 1965, on the 25th day of January, Sir Winston Churchill passed away at his home in Hyde Park Gate, London. According to the New York Times, Churchill's last words to his family were, "I am bored with it all."
Winston Churchill was not only a very interesting character, but also a very complicated person. As many other British men at the time, Churchill held a hierarchical perspective on race, believing white Protestant Christians to be at the top of this hierarchy, and white Catholics beneath them, while Indians were higher on this hierarchy than black Africans. Churchill was not unique in having these views, and although Churchill may have thought that the white people were superior, it didn't mean he thought it was therefore correct to treat non-white people in an inhumane way. He didn't. Churchill saw British imperialism as a form of altruism that benefited its subject peoples, because by conquering and dominating other peoples, the British were also elevating and protecting them. Churchill advocated against native self-rule in Africa, Australia, the Caribbean, the Americas, and India. Believing that the British Empire promoted and maintained the welfare of those who lived in the colonies, he insisted that our responsibility to the native races remains a real one. Even though he was wary of communist Jews, Churchill strongly supported Zionism, and he described Jews as the most formidable and most remarkable race, whose first loyalty will always be towards Jews.
So, Churchill had many powerful and influential contributions to British imperialism as a whole. He was an influential figure who advocated for imperialism and its subsequent benefits until the day he died. Churchill strongly believed in the benefits of the British Empire and pushed for its expansion, advocating for the annexation of territories like Sudan, Iraq, and Palestine. He saw the empire as means of spreading British culture and values around the world, and believed that it was the duty of the British to bring civilization and progress to the territories they colonized. Churchill believed the military force was sometimes necessary to protect British interests overseas and was a vocal advocate for military intervention. He played a key role in the planning of the Gallipoli campaign, but it ultimately proved disastrous during World War II. Churchill's leadership was critical in defending the empire from Nazi Germany. Churchill was also known as a staunch and committed influencer in favor of imperialism. No matter the popular opinion of Britain, he stayed loyal to these pro-imperial beliefs. After World War II, as Britain became more and more decolonized under the Labour Party, Churchill remained a sworn defender and advocate of imperialism. This is in part why he hated Gandhi and the INC so much. He hated their pro-separatist movements. One of Churchill's most significant contributions to imperialism was his unrelenting commitment to civilizing and advancing people. His belief in the superiority of the British way of life drove him to make significant investments in his colonies, particularly in Africa. Churchill understood the importance of building infrastructure, schools, and hospitals in the colonies, which ultimately helped advance the people and their societies. In Africa, Churchill implemented policies that aimed to modernize the colonies, including construction of new roads, railways, and ports. He also made significant investments in education, which helped to develop a new generation of African leaders and intellectuals. Churchill believed that these investments were critical in creating prosperous and stable societies, which would ultimately benefit the entire British Empire. Churchill's vision for a more advanced and civilized world was not limited to Africa. During his time as the Secretary of State for the Colonies, Churchill oversaw the implementation of the Government of India Act in 1935, which paved the way for greater self-government in India. He understood the political and economic progress were intertwined and that true independence could only be achieved through the advancement of both. Churchill's legacy in India extends far beyond the implementation of the Government of India Act. He oversaw the construction of new infrastructure, including railways, roads, and irrigation systems, which helped to modernize the country's economy. He also made significant investments in education and healthcare, which helped to improve the lives of millions of Indians.
As we come to an end through our British imperialism journey, we've come to the conclusion that through Churchill's life events, undoubtedly shaped the heroic leader he became. He would prove his prominence in British imperialism through his advocacy for expanding the empire, pressing for the annexation of Iraq, Sudan, and Palestine. And he believed in spreading the British culture and values all over the world. strongly believed it was Britain's responsibility to bring civilization and progress to its people. Churchill was a staunch enforcer of imperialism. Stubborn in his mind, he remained sworn to his pro-imperial beliefs and had a distaste for decolonization and separatist movements. Overall, he believed his most important contribution to the British imperialism was his belief and influence in civilizing colonies. This was seen heavily in the African colonies, but also in colonies like India and many others all over the world. And he built a mass level of infrastructure in these regions through his policy.